price of what a diner pays has been subsidized by the personal sacrifice of the people that work. And when you really think about that, that's messed the entire market of fine dining pricing up. People genuinely think you can go to a fine dining restaurant and get 3 courses for £35. Are you insane?
Hello and welcome to The Recipe, Superb's podcast about the new generation of restaurants and the people behind them. I'm James Clasper, and in this episode, I'm going to be talking to a fellow Brit who's been described as hospitality personified. Sam Ward is the managing director of the Nimble Restaurant Group, a stable of restaurants owned by chef Simon Rogan, who's widely considered one of the pioneers of the farm-to-table movement in the UK. The group's holdings include 1 restaurant in London, 3 in Hong Kong, and 3 in the tiny Lake District village of Cartmel, including the group's flagship restaurant, Longtime, which turned 20 this year. Named the UK's top restaurant for 4 years in a row by the Good Food Guide, Longtime won a 3rd Michelin star in February, making it the only restaurant north of London to receive that rare accolade. And it's fair to say that Sam Ward has been integral to the group's success. Born and raised a few miles from Cartmel, Sam worked at Rogan & Co., the group's more casual eatery, in his early 20s, before moving to London and working at the Ritz Hotel as a sommelier. In 2012, he returned to Cartmel to head up the front of house team at Longtime, helping it to become a culinary destination on a par with the likes of Noma in Copenhagen or Blue Hill at Stone Barns in New York. Following a stint as the group's operations manager, Sam was appointed managing director in January 2020, and we all know what happened next. Understandably then, there was plenty to talk about when I called Sam recently, but I began by asking him how he got into hospitality and why he stayed.
My mum used to give me £30 a month pocket money, which when I was 12 was a good whack. The trouble was my transport to and from school was £32 a month. So she went into the village and I was very excited because I thought she was going to the bank. She was going to sort out a little bit more pocket money. How much are we going to get? Lovely jubbly. Came back with a job. And so at 12 years old, I was polishing cutlery and pot washing. And that was great, and I started learning to work very early on and did all sorts of jobs between the age of sort of 12 and 18 in various pubs, cafes, catering events, that kind of thing. And I learned some really interesting lessons early on that I didn't realise were going to be valuable. I worked in a pub in Grange called the Commodore Inn. It's not a high-end fine dining establishment, it's a local pub. But I worked with a guy there called John Errington. He's still a really close friend to this day. And he used to do this thing where when you were walking into the pub, you walked past the windows kind of in front of the bar. And he would stand on the bar and he'd look and he'd see who was walking down. He had like a 10-second heads up on who was walking in, right? And I'd be like, oh, it's Paul. And he'd just start pouring a pint of John Smith. And then when Paul got to the bar, there you go, Paul. And that was it. No more conversation, right? Done. And then oh, John's there, lovely. Cronenberg, there you go. And that was just what I was taught. I was, oh, you get ahead. Okay, cool, you get ahead of it, right? So very early on, I was just indoctrinated into the idea of, hey, just get ahead of it. And it wasn't any formal training, but that stayed with me, for the last 20 odd years. If you can just get ahead of the guests, then they're never going to worry about a thing. After that, I carried on working at university in bars. I had to pay my way through university. I wasn't going to get through. And then halfway through university, I took a year in industry. And I convinced my financial studies tutor to let me do it in a restaurant because I was working in a place I really loved. So they did. And at the end of my sandwich year, they offered me a job in the restaurant. So I had a decision to make, further education and or management. And I'd always said to myself, the reason I want a degree is that will help me get a job as a restaurant manager. So this was a bar manager. So I took the job. So my dad was really chuffed because I was the first member of his family to ever go to university. So by default, I was also the first person to ever drop out, which didn't go down as well. And I don't know if he fully got it at that stage either, but I was passionate. I was doing competitions. I was loving it. Came back up to the Lake District where in 2008, Simon was opening Rogan & Co. We met. He gave me the job as bar manager of Rogan & Co. And then my wife got a job in London. So I'm in the Lakes. She wasn't my wife then. She was my girlfriend then. and she's got a job in London working for a photographer. So I said, well, look, I've got this thing going. I'm loving what I'm doing at Rogan and Co. Why don't I come down in like 6 months or a year and we'll just do long distance for a bit? She said, no worries. So she goes down, she finds a flat. It's a flat share, 5 rooms, 4 lads and her. I said, I'll be down next week. Absolutely not. So moved to London, didn't have a job, didn't have a plan. It was during the recession, 2008. I ended up through a few different avenues as a commie sommelier at the Ritz Hotel. And that was when things started to get serious. That place trains you well. I would advise anyone to work there. It's an amazing place to work. And I learned stuff. I got by on personality at that stage. I'm not trying to say I've got a great personality, but in hospitality, if you're out front, present, smiling, you're going to go okay. But they started going, that's not enough. We need knowledge. We need process, order of service. These things need to be done. And so for 3.5 years, I sort of fine-tuned that, came back to the Lake District after the Queen's Jubilee, and Simon gave me the job of maître d' of longtime, which was the job I just fell in love with. And I've been with him for 10 years this September.
Well, congratulations, first of all. And let's start there at longtime. One of the things it's known for is its relatively relaxed style of service, and that followed your appointment as maitre d'. So can you tell me what you did to change things up there?
I mean, I think it's important to note that at the first instance, when Simon had the conversation with me about being the maitre d', that was his focus. You know, he said, I want to go in a less formal direction. And that was really the instruction. It wasn't particularly specific. It was, I don't want a very formal restaurant. Okay, gotcha. So to be honest, I'd love to tell you there was a huge amount of strategy involved, but there just wasn't. What I took was all of the process and the product knowledge and the fact that, you know, you've got to get things right, and went on the floor and we were just ourselves. The big thing for me is, rather than all of the focus being on process, put a decent amount of focus on the people. You know, I still get nervous before every service because I don't know who I'm going to meet. I don't know what stories they've gone through. I don't know what's going on in their lives. But when you start caring about the people that come through, or even, you know, just for a few hours, you automatically become less formal, because it's not about me and what I want to do. It's about what they need. And sometimes it means, you know, breaking the rules a little bit and doing something a bit different. And that's absolutely fine, you know. So I try and now train the team and do things like, okay, you've got someone that comes in and they've had a really bad journey on the M6, okay, which is pretty common. What do you do? You know, it's nothing to do with what spoon to use for a dish. It's nothing to do with what wine to go with something. What do you do? How do you make someone feel good? Because fundamentally, hospitality, you don't take the food home with you. You don't take the wait staff home. You shouldn't take the wait staff home with you. You take a feeling, and then you can get onto the idea of how do you change a feeling? How do you change a memory? Because that's what you know. When you talk to someone about a restaurant, you're not telling them about your experience. You're telling them about the memory of your experience. And the content of an experience versus the memory of experience is a very fascinating topic. So for us, it's about making somebody feel good. And if you can do that, it works. So I think that's where we focused our attention on for a long time. And it started off just, you know, what did the guests need at that point? They needed a ride home. There's no taxis, drive them home. They come in feeling a bit sniffly, make them a honey and lemon. Those things make a huge amount of difference. Someone walks through the door and the first thing they tell you is, it's my mum's birthday. Right, mum's the focus. Let's make mum have a great time, and then everyone else is going to have a great time. It's those sorts of things. And I just think traditional service sometimes forgets to keep the guest in mind. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes.
And was that something you picked up at the Ritz?
I think what I learned from the Ritz more than anything was to be able to speak to almost any type of person, because the clientele is as varied as you can get, from royalty, captains of industry, billionaires, actors, Hollywood, to people coming in who've, traveling through England and they've heard of the Ritz, people being given a voucher, people that never dine out. I mean, those are the ones I used to really enjoy. You know, I remember there was a couple, I can't remember their names now. It was a lady and a gentleman. They were probably about 55. I remember that he was a plumber and she was a nurse in the NHS, and they'd been bought this as a wedding voucher. It was something like 30 years. And they were nervous walking in, and straight away my heart sinks, because I'm going, you shouldn't be nervous, you shouldn't be here nervous, this is your night, right? This is big. And they told me they don't eat out in restaurants and all sorts of stuff. I was like, right. So when the lady went to the bathroom, I said to the gentleman, do you remember any, because celebrating their wedding anniversary, do you remember any of the songs from wedding. And he said a few of the songs from like the first dance and like about the walking down the aisle and that sort of thing. Now, Ian Gomez, who plays the piano there and has done for about 4,000 years, is incredible on the piano and can play any song either from memory or if he listens to it once. So we started making a playlist together of the songs from their wedding. And all night, it wasn't every song, but it was heavily interspersed with songs from their wedding. And they were the only people in the room that knew. And that sort of thing just changes it up. And we told them, we said, look, this is your night. This is about you. And straight away you turned it around. So I did learn it at the Ritz. The same thing on a Sunday night. Who has their tea at the Ritz on a Sunday night? Who goes for tea? Because on a Sunday night, you're not going out celebrating normally. You're not having a business dinner. It's not a big night with friends Friday, Saturday. You're just having your tea. Who does that? And there was a lot of single diners. And I got to chat to them. And you get quite friendly with them quite regular. And you learn that these people that are, own the biggest companies in the world, just people. Just you maybe need to tweak the way you approach it, but just people. So I did learn that skill there, and I did really enjoy doing it there, and just took that into Longclume.
And speaking of Longclume, it won a second star not long after you were appointed maitre d'. That seemed to open all sorts of doors for expansion in Manchester, London, and then later Hong Kong. We'll get to those in a second. But tell me, did the second star open doors in your career as well? How did you progress through the company?
Probably not straight away at the 2-star stage. I had to prove my stripes, to make sure I got people's respect. That was really important in the team. But then as time went on, I wanted to be more involved in that. And it started off by being really opportunist, to be honest. An opening came up at Rogan & Co for the maitre d', and I had an amazing assistant at the time. So it was a great opportunity for him to be able to step up there. And I was able to go over and take over kind of a dual role. I think it was ops manager at the time, but essentially running both restaurants. Then an opportunity came up in reservations. So we didn't have a reservations manager. So I got in there, and that was great because that was where I learned how important that is. It's not just someone picking up a phone and taking a reservation. It can genuinely impact your entire business. And then we didn't really have anyone running the finances inside. So then the half financial services degree came in handy. And it was great because now we have people running, the HR and the finance and the reservations and the restaurants, and they all do it incredibly well. But I can talk to them because I've done every job in the company. I was a sommelier at the Ritz for 3.5 years, so I can talk to my sommeliers. They know more than I do about wine, and I make sure they know that. I'm fine with that. But I know enough to be able to go, well, are there other avenues we can think about here? And I always advise this to people. Don't wait for someone to give you an opportunity. They're out there every day. See them, take them. Just go for it. Go run reservations. You won't know how to do it. Figure it out. And a year later, you will know, and that'll make you a stronger manager. And when a restaurant manager's going, oh, the bloody reservations haven't come through all right, it's going, well, how many times do you get mistakes? One a month? Right, you go do it. You'll get one a day. So I do advise, I think, if you're going to try and grow your career in hospitality, try and see a little bit of everything.
Good advice. Now, going back to the Umbel Group's expansion, there were a couple of high-profile hotel restaurant projects in both London and Manchester that didn't quite succeed. But then more recently, the group's made a big splash in Hong Kong. You've got outposts of both Owlis and Roganic and a wine bar/bakery. So what's the thinking behind all that?
Well, that was a really simple decision. We did a load of pop-ups over a period of 18 months over the UK and over the world. And we did a very similar kind of thing, a sort of Roganic style pop-up, a Longclume style pop-up in various places. And they were sort of week-long or weekend-long. None of them had the response that Hong Kong had. And there was a few things, really. So it was in an existing restaurant in Hong Kong called Murasaki. It was a Japanese restaurant. And they invited us over. These things are fun, right? You get to go. It was, again, big name, but it was still just working people that have been working in restaurants. So, hey, do you want to fly over to Hong Kong and come and cook it? Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, lovely. The response to the pop-up was great from the guests, like really great from the guests. And the owner of the restaurant at the time was also not really used to seeing what we do, liked it, liked the way we ran the place, liked the way we looked after the team, liked the way we served the guests, liked the amount of money in this till. It all went very, very well. So he said, my restaurant's not doing that well. You guys know how to do it better than I do. How about you have the restaurant and I'll sit in the background and you operate it, and we'll have a head office. We'll still keep the head office to do the recruiting and all that jazz. So we said, sure, sounds great. Came in as an operator. It's a sort of managed franchise. We're heavily involved. All management are teams that are people that have trained up in Cartmel. The head chef, Ashley Salmon's trained up in Cartmel 6 years. Pierre Brunelli, who's the GM of the both sites, he's been with me for 5 years in Cartmel. It was also part of a sort of HR thing where we can rotate people through. Obviously, now with the quarantine, we can't really do that, but we can say, oh, start working at Longclume and in 18 months' time, you'll go do 6 months in Hong Kong, that kind of thing. That's not, it's starting to happen again now, which is great. When we opened over there, we were pretty nervous. It's a very opinionated city on food, and it just flew from day one. And we took the same service. Wasn't as easy. We weren't quite sure how it was landing. And we were very, very firm on the fact that we were aiming the whole restaurant at the expat society out there. And so that's what it's about. It's about the English people. They know who we are. They'll come. And our PR guy, Jeffrey Wu, he went, no, don't do that. We're not listening. And he just ignored us, basically, and went firmly for the locals. And thank God he did. He was completely right in that decision. The food is what we do here. It's been tweaked slightly with some of the salt and acidity, but fundamentally it's what we do. We're also right at the front of talking about sustainability. There's not a sustainable infrastructure in Hong Kong. It's just not there. You can barely get something recycled. But it's got to start somewhere, and we've been very vocal. We've done what we can. We don't feel it's enough, but in Hong Kong, it's more than anyone's doing. And so that's good. That starts talking about it.
Sam, in reference to the Hong Kong expansion, you told the UK trade publication Big Hospitality, quote, "We're more confident now. We ask the right questions." What did you mean by that? What are the right questions to ask when launching a new project?
I think just aligning yourselves on what you're trying to achieve. And I think it's important for any partner to do that with anyone they're working with, because if you do that, when you come up against problems, you'll jump them together. But if you're in it for different reasons, then it's not really going to work. So, the first question I would ask any partner that I'm going to work with is, why do you want to do this? Are you doing it to, are either of us riding each other's coattails as well? That's something you don't want. Make sure you're aligned in what you're trying to achieve. Are you both clear about what you're going to put into it? I think arrangements financially should always be both people do well. It's really important. You don't want one party doing better than the other. That doesn't really work, in my opinion. Those are the sorts of questions that you have to go through to just find out, really.
Good advice. Yeah, good advice. One of the other interesting things about the Humble Restaurant Group is that you don't have outside investors, which must be pretty rare. Is it a reason for the group's long-term success, do you think?
This needs fact-checking, but I'd be really interested to know how many restaurateurs have sort of started up on their own, got no investment, and reached, however you want to use the barometer for success for Simon. I don't know what you'd want to, the 3 stars could be one, but I mean, how many 3 stars are still privately owned? I'd be very curious to know that. I don't know, but I don't seem to be able to find many. Yeah, I think that's good. We're nimble. So, I mean, through the pandemic, that was amazing because we were able to make decisions at 9 a.m. and they were in place by 10. And I know people that were working in much bigger environments with partners or investors and boards and all that kind of stuff. It could take 2 weeks to make a decision. Now, you didn't have 2 weeks. You just didn't have it. So we were going on gut. Yeah, I think it works really well for us to do it the way we're doing it. Yeah, and I think if we were to ever work with investors, it would be on a financial basis, not a decision-making basis.
You mentioned the pandemic there and being nimble. So remind me how the Humble Restaurant Group responded back in March 2020.
Well, the first thing that went through my mind was I'd been made managing director and partner of the company in January. And the first major event for us happened on the 15th of March 2020 when Boris Johnson went on TV and said, if I were you, I wouldn't go to restaurants. I'll never forgive him for that. It was so poorly thought out, and I expect more from a leader than that. Every restaurant in the country saw its bookings just fall off a cliff like nothing they'd ever experienced. And for me personally, straight away, I thought, right, I have to step up now. I have to. And Simon as well, of course. This isn't about a menu change or a service change. This is about running a business early on. So Simon and I sat in a room with a couple of the people whose opinions we really value. Tom Barnes, our head of finance, people like that. And we said, right, we've got to look around. People are making redundancies on day 2, as in day 1 being the Monday, day 2, we were all hearing about redundancies. So automatically as an operator, you think, well, if the bigger, more experienced guys are doing this, is this the right thing to do? Maybe they know something we don't. So we did some calculations, and Simon and I were both pretty firm. Well, everyone was pretty firm about, we don't want to do that. We haven't hired these people because they're a number. We've hired the people. So we made a decision. Simon and I stopped paying ourselves instantly. The key management, who are on good wages and should be, went down to very basic minimum wage. So did the management team, and then the rest of the team, the chefs and the waiters and the housekeepers and in the office, it didn't have to get drastically affected because we'd taken the cut from the top. And also a 10% change in someone who's getting paid a lot of money doesn't affect them as much as a 10% change as someone who's not on the higher wages. So we felt that it wasn't about equality, it was about equity, making it genuinely fair. And Simon and I walked around every team and we looked them in the eye and told them, this is what we're going to do and this is the move for now and we're going to work it out. Looking back, it was the singular best move we ever made because we were honest. There was tears at times. It was pretty stressful, but we were really honest and we said, we're doing this for a reason. Furlough actually got announced 3 days later. And that was a bit of a saving grace because we were then able to support the team even more, which we did in a variety of ways. But we'd shown our cards, and that was the thing. And it was honestly, it taught me, keep trusting your gut. Keep trusting your gut. Because the companies that didn't do that are now struggling because they got a reputation for it, they heard about it, and it's not happening. Then, of course, we just went, right, well, we've got to do something. We need to figure something out. So it's well documented. We started, cooking food for the local people. We started a very sort of cheap meal service that developed into Home by Simon Rogan, which then became the new business that financially was what we needed to keep everything going.
And of course, the home meal kit, it wasn't just a hit. It's still going strong. Why is that? Why keep it going?
There's some really good companies out there supporting other restaurateurs to be able to do it. So they might fulfill everything for them and license things out. And I think that's great. It's revenue streams for people that they might not have had. We've chosen to keep doing it ourselves, which is definitely the harder way to do it. But one reason most restaurants don't do it, and it's a perfectly simple one, is they have a kitchen for their restaurant, not to also have a retail line. So we invested a £250,000 into a new kitchen about a mile away from Cartmel, and it's members of our existing team that have moved there to carry on the kits. When we started them up, I don't think we were aware of how big it was going to become. It was something to keep doing something, really. We didn't want to stop. We didn't want to sit on our bums. We didn't want to go and do nothing. There was also lots of great benefits of doing it in the pandemic. It gave us something to talk about, genuinely something to talk about. So we were on the tips of everyone's tongues, which meant we stayed busy when we reopened. We've sold, I don't even know how many now. It's well over £2 million worth of home kits. We sort of cap the numbers at about 200 a week is what we sell at the moment. That works for the model that we've got. We sell 200 meals a week with a little bit more at special dates like Valentine's Day and Mother's Day and Christmas and that sort of thing. So it's going great. It's just another fantastic string to the bow.
Okay, now let's talk about the Academy by Simon Rogan. This is the Umble Restaurant Group's partnership with nearby Kendall College. As I understand it, the Academy is training both chefs and front of house staff and giving them both industry qualifications and experience across your restaurants. So what's the thinking here? What are you hoping to achieve with this partnership?
Well, we had the idea before the pandemic, and we've always worked closely with Kendall College. It's always seemed like a natural thing to do, but we wanted to officiate it and also offer kids, because someone straight out of school at 16 could join a restaurant, but it's nice to give some further education and qualification opportunities. So really, we just put our skills in a pot, the Kendall College and ourselves, and created an apprenticeship that's been tweaked slightly, so it's catered more towards modern dining, more towards our dining. The kids that are doing the Academy are doing great. They've really pulled it all out of the bag, and they're all future stars. There isn't people in the industry that are not out there. This information was true as of April. 178,000 vacancies in the hospitality industry in the UK, which is up 675% on last year. There's a record low unemployment in the UK. Put simply, when you put a job advert out, it's not going to anybody. There's nobody reading them. They're not there. It doesn't matter. You've got to build them. Our industry needs to build them. We need to show them what a great opportunity is. One fantastic thing that's happened with the fragility of our industry being highlighted is that employers are being forced to be better employers. We've always operated fair working hours, fair wages. We look after people. It's now not a perk. It's a must in the industry, and you're seeing this, and I get phone calls every day going, well, how do we do this? I go, well, calculate how much it actually costs, and then charge your guests what it actually costs. The fine dining industry, in my personal opinion, for as long as I've known it, the price of what a diner pays has been subsidized by the personal sacrifice of the people that work. And when you really think about that, that's messed the entire market of fine dining pricing up. People genuinely think you can go to a fine dining restaurant and get 3 courses for £35. Are you insane? Like, really, really break that down. So that's a great time to get into the industry. So the guys coming through the academy now, they're coming into a fresh new world. And it's really important that all the operators like me and people that are older than me don't wear those sacrifices that we've made like a badge of honor. All right. Well, I've done 100-hour weeks and I've done 24-hour days and 36-hour days. That's not helping. Okay. We need fairer working environments, good pay, good opportunities. Anyone that still thinks it's okay to pay someone for 40 hours or 45 hours and give them a 60-hour rota, anyone that thinks, they're going to subsidize the price of it, you're asking a stranger to pay less money so that you don't have to pay your worker family the right wage. It's like, come on, right? So we pay our guys properly and people pay proper money for it, and it works.
Finally then, tell me about that 3rd Michelin star. What does it mean for the restaurant and for Simon and for you?
For Simon, 20 years of graft, right? And again, going back to this thing about, investors, he wasn't given 10 million quid to start a restaurant. He got in a kitchen with a pan and a sweetbread and he cooked. And then another member of staff came along, and then another, and then another, and another. And for me, that is a beacon of hope to any restaurateur out there that you can do it. It gets easier with other people's money, but you can do it. So it's a pat on the back from a hand that does matter. The team know they're working at a world-class level. They know that. They get told that on a daily basis by the guests. So it was really hard for them, I think, to think, well, we're working at a world-class level, but not got the world-class recognition. What that gave us was that, yeah, you really are at the very, very top. And that was amazing. And the key is not to stop pushing forwards. The culture's built on how can we be a bit better than yesterday. I don't want to just like cryogenically save the restaurant. I've seen places that then go, oh, that was it. That was the thing. Don't touch anything. I want to keep moving forwards and I want to keep going as if there's a 4th star, and just keep pushing forwards. We reminded the team of that as well. Don't get scared about this. Don't get freakish. Don't get too serious about this. Keep enjoying it. I think what it will do as well is allow people to look at us on a world stage and come and dine with us. We've already seen that. Diners are coming from all over the world, which is great. I mean, the thing I genuinely love about that is I grew up a mile out of Cartmel. I get to stand in Cartmel in this middle of nowhere in this old medieval village, and I have no idea who's about to come through those doors, and it could be somebody world famous, it could be a local from down the road, it could be someone who lives in Kansas, and I get to chat about that. I get to learn about that. I always try and encourage the front of house, learn from your guests. You get to meet 30, 50, 80 people a day. Ask them questions. I've got loads of marriage advice off my guests celebrating 40th anniversaries, right? I always ask them the same question. You're here celebrating your 40th anniversary. Loads of people aren't. Why? Why are you celebrating that? And the myriad of answers that you get is amazing. Normally, it's something centered around have fun, laugh, enjoy each other. And then the lady goes to the toilet and the gent calls me over and says, just say yes. All the time. And so, we don't want that to change. But the people that are going to come now from all over the world, what a treat. What an absolute treat.
That was Sam Ward, the managing director of the Humble Restaurant Group. And that's all we've got time for this month. This episode was written, produced, and hosted by me, James Clasper, for Superb. Many thanks for listening. Have a lovely summer, and I'll see you next time.